Please welcome Demian Voorhagen. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Apologies in advance. Not a native Dutch speaker. He is the Dutch guy which profitable growing tech companies call when they want to speed up their growth. He's the consigliere or the fractional head of growth behind the scenes, advising them on what to do and not to do when it comes to improving their P&Ls. So he's had thousands of phone calls with everybody from small businesses to B2B to B2C, from mobile apps to fast moving consumer goods. And he gets asked to come in behind the scenes and tell them how to unpack problems, fix what's broken, or better yet, how to improve what's already working for him. He's got a pretty interesting background. He's served a lot of different things we're going to get into on the call in terms of his like different skill sets. I've known him since last year when we met in the Netherlands. He's interested in AI, finance, crypto, a lot of the things that I'm interested in as well. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him. Damian, thanks for making time.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Cool. All right. So do you want to just give a quick background, quick summary in terms of how you got to this part of being this fractional head of growth?
Sure. So I was born and raised in and around Amsterdam, the Netherlands. My path essentially started studying management, economics, and law. I did a minor entrepreneurship. I thought that was a pretty cool thing. So I ended up working in the start and scale up scene. So I worked at a couple of start and scale ups that were growing with funding typically. And it was always kind of tech, marketplace, software as a service related businesses. And I started more in kind of sales roles. And from there on, I really got a hang of data. I was really interested in kind of the data kind of things, analytics. So I moved more to kind of marketing analytics roles. And from there, more into a product owner role at another startup. I had a couple of side projects myself. So I had a marketing agency. I've rented out virtual assistants that were located offshore. I've done forex trading and algorithmic crypto trading. And in the end, I thought, well, I've got a bit of sales experience, marketing. I've seen a couple of companies, and I felt that I was still lacking technical knowledge. So I thought, well, how do I get more technical knowledge as well? And I ended up choosing for artificial intelligence. So I also did a bachelor's and a master's in AI, which saying it now makes a lot of sense. But I started this like 8 years ago. So back then, when I did AI, a lot of people were like, "AI, okay, what is that? And how is that going to be useful?" And now looking back, yeah, everybody's like, "Oh, of course you did AI. That makes a lot of sense. AI is the new thing." And currently, I run a software company where we make trading infrastructure for crypto funds and crypto ETFs. Very niche thing to do, and I do that a part of my time, and a part of my time I spent basically, yeah, let's call it a fractional co-founder, head of growth, advisor, right hand, the person you call when you're in panic mode, and the person that helps you in growth mode as well.
I think it's interesting in your recounting of your story there that it sounded to me like you started in data analytics. So you're looking at from a math based or let's say from a numbers based perspective, what's working or what's not working. And then that led into like a product ownership role where you're
Mhm.
then, yeah, you're like then able to basically say, okay, cool. Like I know what we should do because the data tells us to do this. And instead of me serving as a consultant or an advisor, I'm actually going to own the product and make sure it gets implemented. Is that right?
Yeah, it so happened to work out that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when somebody calls you up or you're involved in sharing, I don't know, when somebody says, I need your help and we need you to come in as this head of growth, what's the first thing you do? Or are you like sitting down looking at their traffic from an organic standpoint? Are you looking at their sales? Like, what do you want to see?
I mean, so it always starts with a conversation, right? So we have an introduction call, or let's call it a discovery call. And we basically look at, okay, do you actively experience any problems? Because typically, and that's the interesting part, is that kind of my best clients, if you will, are the ones that are not really experiencing problems. So everything is fine, and they just so happen to run into me through one way or the other, and they think, oh well, it might actually be interesting to give this guy a go, and then we just start tweaking things based on things that I find, and it really increases the growth rate of the company. But typically, where I start is, okay, what are you currently doing? Are you experiencing any problems, or is there a certain direction where you want to go, where you see problems occurring, or what do you feel is currently holding you back? That's typically kind of the starting point. And then I really start looking at the company in a holistic way. So, what does the website say? What does the copy say? What is the funnel that someone goes through? How is sales done? How is marketing done? What are operations doing? Like, what is the go to market strategy? Some of my clients, they really, some people even hire me like pre company entity, like, okay, I have this idea and I know you have a lot of relevant experience, like, can you help me out a couple of hours a week as kind of like a paid co-founder, so that I make sure that I do the right things. Some already have everything started but are kind of in the looking for product market fit phase, so they have some revenue. And one of the other clients that I also have a case study on my website, very briefly, I've been working there for about 7 months now, and we went from 21 to 55K monthly recurring revenue. So they were
Yeah.
really already quite established, I would say. And me coming in, making a lot of tweaks, kind of just kickstarted more growth for them.
Do you come in and you have to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, or something to be able for these, like let's say the B2C mobile app company, for them to open the kimono, for them to open up and say, this is all that we're doing. Like, how do you? Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. Let me say this a different way. So I'm sitting there, I meet you, we have a chat. I look at this and I say, I'd love for Demian to come in and take a look. I have two concerns. One is that what's like what's the confidentiality in terms of what's shared, and then also if it's a personnel problem. So like I'm not necessarily looking for a consultant. I'm actually looking for somebody who's going to like implement. And I think you also do implementation as far as personnel. Like if you balance the privacy element over here in terms of what they're willing to share with
Mhm.
you, and then also balance the like you actually get involved in the trenches. You're not just handing them a PDF or recommendations. Is that right?
Yeah, so I usually and it yeah, it usually ends up being one of the two packages, I would say. So the most purchased one or most used one is where we basically have a call every other week, and we basically discuss the progress, the current issues, what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, anything that you run into. You get a couple of hours for me doing research on the strategy, things that are relevant for me to give proper advice, introductions, networking, these kind of things. And you get unlimited texting access through WhatsApp, Telegram, whatever you want. And for a lot of people, that's good enough, because most value is found in kind of the ideas that I have and the ways that I challenge their thought process.
Hmm.
But there's a small percentage of clients where I also work a couple of hours a week. I would say more in management and strategy. So I help them essentially get the basics up and running. Typically, I would prefer at least for them to have a budget that I can use as well. So I can get some basic thing going, and from there on, get a freelancer or get someone into position that really has time in hours to spend on it. And they would simply report to me or to me and the founder or director. So, really, to move in the man hours and get things going faster.
And when you so in the second scenario, are you coming in and yeah, are you still like are you primarily interfacing with these companies through texting through WhatsApp, or are you actually in there? Let's assume they're using a project management software, ClickUp, Trello, Asana. Are you in there with them, like how deep are you going in that scenario where yes, you're bringing in somebody to report to both you and, let's say, the CEO,
Mhm.
but yeah, what does it look like? Are you in the weeds with them?
I would say it depends, and I think that's also kind of the power of what I do. I don't really have a template, which makes my work very shitty on one hand, very powerful on one hand. So there's
Yeah.
not really one answer I have there. It's kind of, for example, I could go into a project management tool, but if it takes me like a couple of hours a week to just keep up to date reading everything, that's probably not going to make much sense. It would be easier for me to have like 1 to 3 people that are running things that I can just have a brief chat or update from. But for example, yeah, one of my clients, it was a solo founder that hired me. And I said, well, okay, it makes sense to have some project management tool. We went for Asana because I've more experience there. I got some things going. I got a budget, and then I got couple of freelancers in that I also onboarded into Asana, and I'm just checking their work, and they're essentially reporting to me. And that's kind of the management strategy work that I do. So I look at what should we be doing, how are things going, right? So I check the data, I check the revenue, I check the churn metrics, and a lot of other metrics that we define as most relevant. And then I make sure that the people get to work, do the right work, and influence those metrics in the way that we want them.
And what do you charge for both of these things? If you could give like a ballpark, both scenarios, whether it's the biweekly calls or the more in depth.
Yeah. So the subscription with essentially the bi-weekly call, a couple of hours a month on me researching things and unlimited texting, currently has just like a fixed monthly rate of €1,000 a month. That's currently fixed, and it just goes up every couple of clients that I get. And yeah, if I have a couple of clients going, I'm really overbooked, and the more experienced I get, the pricier it gets. So I
Yeah,
started at a lower
makes sense.
price, and currently that's what it at. Because yeah, for most clients, they have that paid back very fast as well. So it's usually a very good deal, and unless you're of course pre-revenue, because then the value add is a bit different. For the fixed amount of hours a week that comes with it, it's typically more of a custom made deal. So usually it's a fixed rate and a variable rate as well, and that depends on kind of the company stage, the incentives that I have. It could be, a percentage of revenue, a percentage of the margin made. We could watermark it at the current revenue. And if we know that, for example, there's no commercial activities happening, we know that increases in revenue are definitely from my side.
Yeah,
So that typically requires a bit of more, yeah, custom deal, I would say. But I like having some sort of variable in there if possible, because it also kind of gives me a skin in the game. It gives me a bit of upside as well. But yeah, usually there's at least a fixed rate to cover my expenses, because I get a lot of requests like, hey, can you do this work like 1 day a week, and we just give you equity, which is typically nice. But I mean, if you have like a lot of people offering that, at some point, I'm like, yeah, well, that's really cool, but I also want to pay my rent or mortgage. I have food to pay, so at some point, I also just need to charge and yeah, live.
yeah, 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 yeah. Cash is the best equity sometimes.
Yeah, or at least a hybrid form of that, if possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So when people when these people are coming to you, in my business experience, I, we have similar skill set, and I would just say that like a lot of times when I look at this, I want to have skin in the game, and I want to basically say, yeah, I don't want to trade time for, let's say hours for money. I would like to have upside, and especially because I think there's an information asymmetry, and then what I mean by that is that when you look at a project, you go, okay, cool. I know if we do one, two, three, it's going to probably result in this amount of growth. And if you're I don't know, like you would say, I think I can bring you this amount of growth, and it's probably worth 50% of that if I can double your MRR, let's say, in the next 12 months. And
Yep.
so, yeah, I think you wind up in an interesting dynamic where you're both friendly with the brand, the company, the person that you're talking with, and then also you don't want to necessarily give away all of the secret sauce. I don't want to call it that, but like you don't want to basically sit down and go, "Here's everything I would do," and in order to justify getting the deal done. That's part of the reason I think why you want the soft sell. You want people to come to you rather than you're trying to reach out and convince people of your value. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that's partially right. I don't think I have kind of the secret sauce thing so much, because I don't really have templated work, right?
Mm.
So for example, the 1K a month subscription, a lot of coaches or consultants, they offer like a 6 month track or a 1 year track where you just do one payment, right? So you pay 15, 20K, and then you have someone for 6 months. I just offer a subscription on a monthly basis where I say, well, if you feel that I'm not delivering value on an ongoing basis, we don't need to work together anymore, because I
Yeah.
feel that I can provide ongoing value and I don't have one secret sauce. You can just throw me in any kind of situation and I can be innovative in a way that a lot of people wouldn't think of, or at least be very efficient in some way. So in that sense, I think that I see that a little bit differently, and I like working that way. But I think in terms of a business model, it's usually a bit of a worse deal on my side. But it's just a way that I like working.
Yeah. These people become friends of yours as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. Usually, as I said, like a lot of people really like that they have me basically on WhatsApp. So a lot of these people, I talk to them daily or every couple of days, and they just send me like oh, what do you think of this? Should I do this or that? Or it's also just small questions, right? Because you're really kind of a fractional co-founder in that sense. So you really become kind of close, integrated in the business, and you're the first guy that they typically send a message to if they're thinking about something, right? I'm looking for this tool. Do you know something useful there, or do you know anyone there, or do you know someone that does this? I'm looking for that. Yeah, you just have a lot of brief contact through WhatsApp as well.
So let's talk about tools for a minute. So what is some of the mm, when I met you, you were keen on a variety of different AI tools. Do you want to share some of those that you like that you're using in your work?
I mean, I think one of the most used is still ChatGPT, because it just offers a lot of different functionalities, and it basically it's able to take multiple roles, right? So, for example, the last couple of weeks, I've been trialing a LinkedIn tool that helps you with your personal branding through AI, and yeah, everything is with AI nowadays, or AI is the core functionality. But I was really not that impressed, because when you recognize how ChatGPT works and how it does things, you typically it's quite easy to see when another tool is basically just a ChatGPT extension.
Mm.
So for a lot of things, I know that there's a tool out there, but it's typically based on ChatGPT anyway. And then I think like, well, I can prompt the tool better myself, and just work with the core functionality, right? So it could be for writing content, but also to find other tools, or to find specific websites, competitors, a go-to-market plan. Typically, ChatGPT is able to offer a lot of inspiration, but at the same time, I wouldn't base all my work on it, and I consider it more of kind of a sparring partner than that I would literally copy paste whatever it spits out. So I would never post a blog on my website or any of my clients' websites that is generated by ChatGPT and not edited by a content writer, for example.
Makes
So I
sense.
see it
Yeah.
as a kind of a way of extension, but not really a replacement.
Yeah. Makes sense. I like that analogy of it being a sparring partner. For the B2C mobile app, do you want to go through a little bit of what you did there and what you've done over the past 8 months to to help them basically double their MRR? Like what on your website you talk about, I think a content strategy, pricing strategy, A/B testing of a couple of their funnels. Do you want to share what you've done there or what you've helped lead? Let's say.
Yeah, sure. So when I came in, it was a solo founder. They did 21K MRR a month, which is very impressive, I would say, for a solo founder doing most of or basically every work on his own. So I came in contact with him basically kind of through kind of a lucky hit and a referral. And I said, well, I think the app is already growing nicely, and you're not doing so much, and I think we can really kickstart that. So we said, well, if you say so, I'd be interested. And considering the revenue that he was generating already, working with me should be a return on investment quite fast, right? Because with a couple of improvements, you should be able to have like a profitable payback on what I cost. And so we started, and essentially I just do a whole holistic review of the business, right? As I said before, what is happening in terms of sales, marketing, operations. But in this case, because it's an app and it's very user centered, more than a lot of other tools, I would say, you really look at, okay, so what are the flows of the app? It's a freemium as well. So that kind of changes the dynamics as well. Instead of, okay, people cannot use it, but they can use a trial. But people can also use this app for free. So we looked at things like, okay, how is the pricing currently in the market? What are the trial offers? What are the trial benefits? There wasn't much of a content strategy. So I got someone on board to work on that. Got someone on board to do the actual content as well. We set up a community for people to connect with each other. I got other conversion rate optimization gurus to take a look at the app. I looked into strategic partnerships, and we basically did a lot of different tweaks at the same time. And you really saw that the growth trajectory went from like kind of a going upward way, but it really went like it curved upwards like 1 to 2 months after I started. I'm not sure if it's in mirror, but maybe that way or that way.
We would say a hockey
So
stick. Yeah.
yeah, hockey sticked a lot more for sure. Yeah,
Congratulations. Yeah. And this is also one of the clients or one of the projects where their business was okay already, right? They weren't necessarily looking for you or someone
no,
like you. And
not at all.
yeah, and it happens organically. And they're like, cool. Like, I like Damian. I like what he seems to, let's say, under promise and over deliver. And I imagine, I don't know if this is true. So tell me if I'm wrong, that
Sure.
your funnel for your work looks something like you want to start people at maybe this every other week call, and then as you get to know them, their business, their problems, you potentially say, okay, cool, I can help you more in depth, or actually, I'm just happy keeping it at a biweekly call level. Like, I don't know if you actually bring somebody in and go right to, yeah, the fractionals, the fractional head of growth.
So in this case, I started with I believe it was 4 hours a week, and then we did that for a while because like he was a bit nervous, right? Which makes sense because I was essentially the first person ever for him to cost any money,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't very cheap either, not even for 4 hours. And I said, well, I'm not cheap, but you will know very very soon if it's going to make a return or not. And if at any point you feel like it's not worth it, we can just cancel it. I don't want to work if it doesn't provide any value anyway. So it either has to work from both ends or it doesn't work, and we just accept that. And then I think 2 months in, he saw the first things kicking in. we essentially already made profit on what I cost. And he was like, okay, well, can we increase hours because it was going quite well? And then we increased to 1 day a week, which is very cool. But at the same time, I'm also thinking about the amount of limitations that I have, right? Because I cannot do a lot of clients, which is also something I would kind of like to solve at some point. But then again, you come back to the point of it's not really templated work, and it really requires like strategic insight as well. So that makes it a tough cookie to solve.
Yeah. And how do you think about this work relative to Dema trading? And what I mean by that is that are you looking at projects and people who come in and say this would be, yeah, this would be something I would love to get involved with and maybe go full time on if the opportunity was right? Or like, are you done? Or in other words, are you done with Dema trading, or is this like a creative endeavor, or is it like an actual like career transition into something else?
I'm not sure yet. So far, I really like doing both things. So I was doing demo trading pretty much full time, and at some point I got into contact with some people, and it kind of naturally started rolling, where I just did a couple of these calls every month to help out some people. And then it was like, okay, well, maybe I should tie this kind of to a personal brand and just offer it more as kind of a service because I can do it on the side anyway. And I noticed that it really made me a better entrepreneur in my own company as well, because you see different problems from different companies. It kind of challenges your mind. You also network a lot, right? So that also gives you kind of a leverage on your learning. And yeah, in AI we call it kind of cross learning, right? So I noticed that if I have more clients, I'm typically better able to help each individual client as well, because I learn from every client at the same time. And I really like building something myself as well. So in this way, I kind of have a big baby that I partially built myself, and a couple of a bit smaller babies, so to say, where I'm very involved in their growth, and they matter personally to me as well. But I'm not the key person building it, but more facilitating the building and the growth there. And doing those two together has been really nicer than I expected initially.
That's cool. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So inside of Dama, then are you you're more hands on? I take it. I don't know lack of a better way to put it, but are you actually doing? Are you coding? Like, what does that look like? Like, if 50% of your time is over there, like, what does that look like that you're actually doing on a day to day basis?
So I'm more of the commercial guy, and so I actually met my co-founder at the study of AI. So we can both code, and I can also code, right? So if you do AI, you're pretty much assumed to learn Python, and I think most people having done a mastery in AI have at least a solid base of Python themselves. But my co-founder was really more interested in developing the technical side, and I
Mm-hmm.
was never interested that much in being a developer. For me it was more interesting to learn about, okay, so how does a developer work, how do they think, how do I communicate with them. And I can jump pretty much in a sales call, someone can tell me what their technical requirements are for a project, and I can pretty much guesstimate quite well if this is very easy to do. It's going to be a medium sized project, or okay, well, this is going to require serious funding, a big team, and quite some years. And having that skill in a call makes a lot of sense and has been quite useful to date. And I can also, on a technical level, help a lot of my clients where typically the commercial guy isn't really able to do that much. But yeah, so to answer your question, I'm more of the commercial side, which is literally everything from sales, marketing, operations, sales calls, these kind of things.
Yeah, the money coming in the door. Let's say.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So then, with your, if you have crypto and demo trading over here, although it's damatrading.ai, let me be clear for those listening. And then you have also in crypto at a meta level a tremendous amount of projects that are launching, have tokens that are nominally associated with AI. Are you dabbling at all in that world in terms of what's happening on chain with, I don't know, let's call it Fetch, AI, Tau, Bit Tensor. I don't know if you're familiar with some of these projects, but yeah, like, are you also are you watching this? You got a master's in AI. You have a background in crypto. I know you're working with like institutional funds in terms of demo trading, but like, are you watching what's going on as well over here with, yeah, with what's going on chain with these AI tokens?
I mean, slightly, but not as much as most people think.
Okay.
So the whole crypto thing that we do for funds, it's more about buying and selling assets and delivering an efficient infrastructure than it is really about specific crypto knowledge. So I personally I like the crypto space. Mostly because I think these kind of things really push adoption and innovation also in other markets, right? So I'm equally a fan of, for example, Tesla, especially in the beginning stage, not because it's Tesla, but rather because I think that the world has to move to a place where electric driving is becoming more of the core functionality. And a company like Tesla is really pushing that forward on a global level. So I think crypto on a global level is really going to level up the whole financial industry and the way that we work with blockchains and with money and immutable databases. And there's a lot of different things to push there that I think are good. But on an individual level, I don't care that much about this specific project or that specific project. And I'm not following that much there because there's just so many projects to follow. I've done day trading before in more the Forex space. And I'm kind of the person that if I do something, I really do it, and I kind of lost the rest of my life doing these things, right? So I just remember going to the cinema and actually having trading positions open, and then during the movie, like every 30 minutes, I had to check because there was a market opening or an event happening. I wanted to check my positions. And after the movie, you have to check your positions and adjust your stop loss, take profits, and it kind of
Yeah.
it kind of starts it really becomes something that you just breathe, and that's not something that I want to keep doing. When I'm working on projects, I can work and make impact, and if I don't work, I can just think about it if I like to. So typically, a lot of the times, I'm taking a shower, walking somewhere, I'm thinking about one of my clients, which is also one of the reasons why I can't have 30 clients at the same time, because each and every one requires a minimum amount of brain space. But if I'm out on a day, with friends, or doing something with family, I can also let go of things.
Yeah.
And that's
Be
something that I
present.
kind of lost. Yeah, and that's kind of what I lost trading. And yeah, it's essentially the same with crypto and these new projects, because you're chasing this new project there. You have to read the news there, and then there's kind of a pump and dump there. And it's just a forever flow of information and things happening, and it's just not something that I want to prioritize in my life at this point.
Yeah. I get it. I've gone through a similar dynamic. I understand what you said very, very well.
Yeah.
And I think that crypto is a forcing function to, yeah, let's say, smooth out the rough edges of the global financial system, or at least deal with the rent seeking that takes place in the financial system in terms of, the amount of money that is taken. Well, just for whether it's money transmission, whether it's credit card fees, these kind of things, like crypto has an ability to kind of attack those at a global level, I think.
Yeah,
As,
absolutely. It's actually interesting because every bank in the Netherlands, or at least every bank that's quite big, has dedicated people working on blockchains. So a lot of people think that the banks are kind of getting rid of crypto and getting rid of, trying to dump everything, but they see what the innovation can do there as well. And there's still a big difference between crypto and blockchain, right? Because a blockchain is not necessarily a currency that you can do something with. But the whole idea of blockchain, which was fostered by crypto, is something that all the banks are working with right now. So that's still kind of an innovation pushed through and making an impact. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, kill the banks and everything is bad, and they're not doing anything in terms of innovation. But you see that they are doing a lot there, and a lot of banks, they also want to actually offer crypto for their clients as well. But it's just simply the regulations that don't allow them to. So it's not something that it's necessarily their choice, but more kind of a result of an overlaying institute in Europe.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
kind of
So
derailing here. We could talk about this specific topic for hours as well, I guess.
yeah, we don't. I mean, yeah, it's going to go where the conversation is going to go where the conversation is going to go. But I think on the topic of blockchain, like when you say the banks are adopting it, you're talking about a distributed ledger. That's the core technology that they're quite interested in. And then when it comes to offering crypto to their customers or clients, they run into regulatory issues in terms of not being able to comply. Either they can't comply with the regulations or the regulations aren't clear, so therefore they don't want to touch it, and then they don't want to custody the funds or custody the assets, and then don't offer it to, yeah, to me or you. Let's say,
Yeah,
is that right? Yeah,
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 yeah, exactly.
yeah. So, and what is the, like when you think about new businesses that you new businesses that you would like to work with in terms of um, being a fractional head of growth, is it predominantly like B2C? Is it predominantly B2B? Is it SaaS? Is it e-com? Like who's kind of in your sweet spot?
I mean, I'm open to talk with a lot of companies, and typically after the first call, we know if there's going to be something that we can do together or not. But so far, most of the work has been in the more the B2B space, I would say. Although, as we said, the mobile app that got most of the revenue increase, or at least more than doubled in half a year, that's actually B2C. But yeah, I would say that the companies at least should be able to push some sort of innovation or kind of a strategy. So typically, it ends up being kind of a tech company, a marketplace, software as a service, right? Something involving software or coding, because there's a lot of different choices that you can make, and the more choices you can make, the better you need to make these choices as well, right? So the exact opposite would kind of be starting a bakery down the street, right? I mean, there's a very limited amount of things you can do from an innovating perspective or a proper strategy. Um, so yeah, it usually ends up being kind of in the tech space at least. Um, and
Makes
so
sense.
far, most of my experience has been early stage. So pre-founding, just after founding, and the B2C app is currently the biggest one in terms of revenue, I think. Is that true? I think, yeah, approximately, right? So typically, there's less innovation done if you get close to the 100K MRR point and beyond. I still think it would be interesting to work in that space, but my expertise really has been below that.
Yeah, and when some of these people book a call with you, are they also possibly looking for funding or money? And why I say that is because I think it'd be pretty easy for you to transition. I mean, coming from the States, having worked in Silicon Valley, transitioning into like an entrepreneur in residence position inside of a fund where the fund says, okay, cool, we have deployed 100 million across these different portfolio companies. We want Demian to look at all the portfolio companies and come in and possibly help them. So yeah, when is the transition, or maybe there is no transition to you managing money or working for a a fund, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I raised funding myself as well, through multiple methods. So I also have experience there. I would say that considering the current clients that I have, it makes most sense to work with companies that are pre-seed or seed stage, because I just have less experience working with Series A and beyond. And I would still be interested to see what I can do there, but obviously the whole game changes from there. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of funds in the pre-seed seed stage, a lot of fintech, AI related companies where, yeah. So I definitely think that would be interesting.
Yeah, but you're but it's not, yeah, your sweet spot's pre-seed, seed, let's say, and uh,
Yeah,
and also, yeah, just cut me a check, or let's come up with a compensation structure that is aligned. And I don't really want to put money into to your pre-seed or to your seed round, right? Like I'm going to put sweat equity in, and you're going to pay me for it in some way in some way or
yeah,
another.
yeah, yeah. So far, that's been more the case, indeed.
Yeah. Is your expertise more in paid marketing? Is it more in SEO? Is it more in mm, yeah? If I came to you and I said, what are you good at marketing? Like, because I think partially what I hear in your story is an interest in psychology and an interest in like human, let's say, choice and why people pick to do certain things. It's
Yeah,
partially when you were describing AI, where you wanted to learn why people, how did you phrase it, something like, it's useful to learn how to write in Python, but you didn't necessarily want to be a Python developer, and also
yeah,
like how these tools could be used to kind of better people's lives, or used in a more intelligent way.
yeah.
So I'm circling around the question. I think the question I think the question is one of how do you kind of talk myself into a circle on this. If you want to take it, go ahead. I don't know if you got a question out of there, but that was a word
Yeah,
salad.
yeah.
Sorry.
So expertise more on organic or paid, for example.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So, yeah, yeah. So my answer typically is going to annoy half of the people, and other half is really going to love it. But I really try and be on top of everything there. So I want to make sure that I have a basic to slightly advanced understanding of each and every one of those things. So I know a little bit about SEO, right? So I can check what the ranking is of a website. I could do like a rough analysis of, is your website really shitty in terms of keyword strategy? Does it make sense? Like, are you out competing people at the moment? Where do people come from? Is it from keywords? And should we focus on that? But I also have experience with paid ads, also because I've had my own marketing agency. So I've actually set up Google Ads myself. I have built Facebook campaigns and retargeting campaigns and LinkedIn campaigns, and so I have experience there as well. And I think that that is very valuable because I can go through everything on a basic level and look at, okay, what can we do on an organic point of view and what can we do from a paid point of view? Because typically both are important. But if I get going with a client, we want to look at organic, but improving your organic game is typically like a mid to long game strategy. So that's something that's really nice to do. We typically at least do it on the side or make it really a priority. But especially, yeah, the paid marketing is typically a better way to grow if possible, because you can very easily determine, okay, what is it going to cost to acquire a user? How much do I need to spend to get that user in? And very fast you'll be able to find out if it is profitable to do, or typically rather the question is how long is it going to take for that customer to bring back its own ad spend, and then we want to minimize that time so that we can roll over the same funds again, right? So we want to spend money, get a customer, getting them to pay, get that money back as soon as possible so we can use that to get another customer. And the better you can do that, for example, as well, funds will definitely look at this, and they even have KPIs where if it takes you too long for a customer to get paid back, they will really not invest in your business. So
Mm,
that, I guess, also ties in your question with, do you work with companies with funding? Some of my clients come to me and say, well, hey, should I raise funding? Um, what are the implications of that? Because it's not only what you need as a minimum requirement, but it also changes the way that you run your company, right? Because typically, the moment you raise funding from a VC, at least if we're talking about a VC in that case, you're really building a company ready to exit. And a lot of people like building a company where they really just prefer growing organically, having a profit, having a cash cow or a lifestyle business.
yep.
And I've spoken to people that think, well, okay, I can use funding to faster get to the lifestyle or cash cow business that I want. And in the end, they get disputes with investors, and it really
Yep.
becomes one shit show. Really, because it's just a different way of working, and it's something you need to account for as well.
Yep. Yeah. I think you're right in that. Like when you, yeah, when you take on somebody else's money, there is like implicit in that agreement is they want a return on capital, and they are not super interested in you building a lifestyle business from that point forward, right? They're not super interested in you having a, like, they can, you can have a cash cow of a business, they can be on board with that, but they look at it and they go, okay, cool, like I think at some point you would like to sell this cash cow of a business, otherwise you wouldn't have taken on funding to grow it. And so we need to kind of, again, gear for an exit. And you look at this and go, well, I make X amount of money per year and I get to do whatever I want to on my own time limit. And I don't really care about exiting and needing to deal with that. Right. Like it's like a divergence in a way.
Yeah, it might be kind of a hybrid or a different scenario if you do like a friends, family, full, or potential angel round, right? Because some companies, they just need funding to get going because they need to develop a minimum amount of software to get going. So they might need to raise like 200K once. They just get the software going, and from there they can pretty much grow organically. And then friends and family or the specific angel is okay with, just having dividend payouts, or they even have an agreement. I've seen that multiple times where the angel is just bought out a couple of times later, right? So they put up an
Hmm.
investment, they raise 200K, and then a couple of years later they just get bought out with a multiplier. But typically that's not really what a VC is interested in. So it also really depends where you raise. I guess another example would be with a strategic partner, where you can really enhance each other's offer, for example, or do a combined offering. There's also a very different way of raising than simply with a VC that is just on, okay, we need to get money, 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 go, go, go. And typically VCs have a higher risk profile as well. So it's more okay for them to try and maximize growth and fail in the process. Where typically an angel or your friends and family, they're okay with you taking less risk as long as you make it. And VCs, they just assume that, like 90, 95% is going out of business anyway. So we might want to push the gas on every one of them so that most die. But if they make it, they're going to make it big. And that's what they usually go for.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. So if somebody's interested in finding an angel, they don't have friends and family to raise the 200K. They're in the Netherlands. They're in Europe. Where do they like? What's the angel network to? You also had said previously in the podcast you've done a couple different fundraising rounds and done it in different forms and fashions. So how does somebody do an angel round if they're Dutch?
I mean, it really depends on kind of what exactly you want to raise and everything. But I would say generally, there's the niche that you're working in. There's typically like community websites or investor website or communities that you can go to. A lot of them allow you to pitch as well. Sometimes free, sometimes for you have to pay a fee because they simply get too many applications or they have some sort of a selection process. But there's a lot of lists of angels around. A lot of people have angel investor or something like that in their profile, so you can just find them on LinkedIn, and yeah, at least getting the basic list of a couple of investors is typically quite easy. I would say, if possible, it would always be nice if you can get a referral or get someone in your network, because those are usually closer. The fact that you can find an angel quite easily, by definition, means that they are quite easy to find. So you're not going to be the only person sending them a
Pitching them.
message. Yeah, and a lot of people tend to forget that. They think like, okay, wow, I have this really unique thing. I found this person, so they must be willing to invest. But yeah, the easier you find a person,
Hmm.
the more approachable they are. So by definition, the
Hmm.
more approached they are, because there's a lot of people looking for funding always. So yeah, if possible, look for a bit of a harder way to get to someone. Maybe it could be an introduction from someone. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, I would say, depending on the scenario. But it's
Makes
definitely
sense.
something I've discussed with some clients that we looked at. Also, for example, if it makes sense, you could go for a crowdfunding route. But typically, I would only recommend that if you have a product that your users actually want to fund. Right? So crowdfunding typically doesn't. So, for example, to make it concrete, if you're an enterprise focused B2B business, a crowdfunding typically makes less sense because crowdfunding is used to get your first kind of inner group of users or your power users. Whereas if you have a B2C concept, or B2B in a SaaS fashion where you can just get a lot of entrepreneurs that you reach, those are all investors that also use your product. So the metrics are typically better from these user groups as well. Not necessarily in terms of revenue, but rather in terms of churn, customer happiness. They tend to provide feedback easier. They're more open for customer interviews because they're both a user. Typically, they want or need your product. At the same time, they're an investor, so they want your product to improve for multiple reasons, which is a very interesting proposition for a business that is able to raise that way.
Yeah, and I think I like what you said there because I also think there's something, having been on both sides, that, and when I say I've been on both sides, what I mean is, I have a product that I love. Let's say it's a coffee maker, and they somehow, I'm on their email list and they do a crowdfunding campaign. I don't care so much about that as a consumer. Let's say I'm using an example versus I have a tool that I use in my business, and I know that that tool, if it was improved, it would make it so that I could do better in the business. And I'm also much more willing, like kind of invested at a B2B level, to help that business or help provide feedback that would like share that business with my network. And there's some psychological concept there. I don't remember what the name of it is, but it's, like, I know people who would happily spend hundreds, thousands of dollars in their business because, honestly, because I think there's a clear ROI, or at least they conceptualize that they can make an ROI on it versus being the thousand raving fans for the B2C coffee maker or the product that shows up on a Kickstarter or a GoFundMe, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is one of the things where I say that the work that I do is not so templated, because for some businesses the crowdfunding makes sense, for some it doesn't, for some it could, but it wouldn't necessarily be the best way. And it's kind of, you're kind of able to label it in a step, like a function tree, where okay, well, do your users need the product as well, and you go, yes, okay, interesting for crowdfunding, But in the end, making all these kind of decisions require just some kind of insight. And
Yeah.
that's also why I think it's like I probably have one of the best jobs ever that is never going to be automated by any kind of AI, because it requires you to cross so many things together and think outside the box often. I feel pretty confident that I'm going to have a job for the next 50 years.
Yeah. 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 Problem solver. I mean, that's really like because somebody comes to you with a problem. And what I hear you say is, okay, cool. Like, I don't, maybe how even I said the problem to you is not the right problem. The problem is actually another one in this decision tree or in this,
Yeah.
as I'm starting with. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're helping them think clearer in a way, or at least think about
Yeah.
it a
And I
different
think,
way.
yeah. And I think AI is typically a very well solution if you have a very specific problem that you know is the problem that you want an answer to. But for example, say that you're asking an AI, well, I want to increase my revenue, so I want to run a LinkedIn campaign. Help me think of content to run that campaign. But at the same time, you're going to drive people to your website, which is just a shitty copy, and is not going to convert at all, or your whole sign up flow is just one big mess. It's a conversion killer. The AI is never going to think about, okay, I'm not going to say never. At this point, the AI is
Yeah.
not able to kind of make those kind of inductions and deductions both ways. And it's not going to be able to help you in such a generic, broad way where a person is actually able to think, okay, well, what does this imply? Okay, well, this question comes with assumptions. Okay, so what are the assumptions and what are the assumptions there? And in the end, you find out that your campaigns haven't been working because your sales rep is just completely off with whatever he does, or something else is broken on the website, or you're just targeting the wrong group of people anyway. And those are all things that you want to check, and it just requires a person at this point. And I don't know, maybe at some point AI will be able to do all of these things, but in the end, I don't see AI becoming a replacer rather than an extension anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's well said. Yeah. So as we cut, like, we're coming up on an hour here. I think what would you like people to take from this? And what I mean by that is, so, okay, cool. Like when I listen to you, as you're trying to acquire more customers or clients or leads, calls, whatever the metric is that we're going to use,
Yep.
partially why we're doing this podcast is you're practicing your messaging. You're also I'd say at a higher level networking, and LinkedIn, as you alluded to, hasn't necessarily worked as far as getting more of these calls, or at least getting more of the types of calls that you want. So what is it that you think, what is it you think if you used your experience and looked at this as a business problem, how do you grow your business if it's not through LinkedIn? Or how do you grow it through, is it, and let me give you an example, is it through going on more podcasts? Is it becoming on the speaker circuit? Is it writing a book? Is it,
Mhm.
yeah, what are you contemplating?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've done this service for quite a long time, but I've never actually actively promoted it. So typically, I did it for half a day to a day a week, essentially looking to scale it up to 2 days a week. But I don't have to at the same time. It's just because I like doing it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's also figuring out a little bit what works. How do I get clients for this? As I think we also discussed privately, is what do I even call this in one line, right? I mean, so we've covered an hour and a lot of things that I do, and I basically call it a fractional co-founder, fractional head of growth. But before that, it was actually kind of a startup consultant, and the title kind of switched multiple times. So I'm still also looking for the proper angle that covers exactly what it is that I do, which is kind of hard because it's so generic. I've done a lot of podcasts before, but never about this topic specifically or about my own business in this way. But I like doing podcasts, so it's definitely something I would like to do a bit more. As you said, it's also nice for networking and just chatting to people as well. So yeah, podcast is one thing. I've thought about a book as well, as you mentioned, but coming back to the whole, I don't know exactly how to template this or how to make a blueprint out of this. I think a book is going to be very hard,
Yeah.
or you would really need to cover kind of what do you do in a business, and then do a chapter on sales, a chapter on organic marketing, paid marketing. This is not really something I feel like doing right now. But yeah, I think just doing a couple of podcasts and improving my LinkedIn and potentially the website copy a bit further is very likely to be enough already for the goals that I have.
To get to two
Because
days
the
a week where
website,
you're booked up.
yeah, to get like a couple of additional clients that I can really help with growth with something that I think is cool as well. Because to be fair, the website that I have right now, it looks all right, but I built it myself in a couple of hours. I haven't really spent a lot of time on a lot of these things because it hasn't been so important, and I always did it passively on the side.
Well,
So
let me add one thing there. But also, I think that there's a contradiction. I don't mean this in a negative way, but you don't want the website to sell too much in the sense of you want somebody who has listened to you, heard about you, been referred to you, who is more keen to talk with you than they looked at the website and they were like, "This is the guy that I want." Because like it's almost through it's through the phone call and the discovery process that both of you figure out if you're going to work together. So you don't want the website to promise them the moon because that's honestly not what you're
no,
doing.
no,
You're
no,
kind of
for
like, yeah, you
sure.
want to go through the discovery process and see if there's actually value to be added before you agree to work with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I never, I can say never in this case. I never promise results because it's not something that I believe in. So I don't say, well, you know, double your revenue in 3 months'
Yeah,
time with this secret trick. That would even be more marketing. But yeah, people can just go to my website, which is just my first name last name.com, right? So damianvoorhagen.com, and then you can just book a discovery call. Right now it's free because I do a couple of these a week because I also like them. I like doing them. I like meeting new people. It's a nice way to network. Some people I can just help in one call, and in that sense, I see it a bit as paying it forward. I just help them in one call, and at some point they might return the favor, and if not, that's also fine. Maybe they can return it to someone else. And for some of them, it actually ends up like, wow, I got so much value out of this call. We need to make this a regular thing. And then we look at what makes sense for them. So it could be like the monthly subscription thing. Maybe a couple of hours is needed for me to really be on top of things as well. And we just figure that out as we talk. And I don't really see the talks that I have as so much as a sales conversation, but
yeah,
more about an open talk. What are you running into? Do I think I can help you? And if I don't, I will just tell you, and maybe I know someone else that is able to help you, or there's something else that I can do for you. But yeah, I don't see us as salesy as most people do, I would say as well.
yeah. They're coffee dates in a way. Let's say,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
exactly.
yeah, they're a coffee date, a digital coffee date. Okay, so let's end on that point. If you would like a digital coffee date, if you would like a non-sales sales call with Damien, you should go to his website. You can, for right now at least, get a chance to chat with him without charge, and you're going to see if it's going to work for you. And I think out of that, where should people go? Like, if you want to spell your website so they know how to write your name, what do you also follow you on LinkedIn or reach out to you on LinkedIn? Like, what do you prefer?
Yeah, they can reach out to LinkedIn. Like if you want to have the call for sure, then the easiest way is just to go to the website and book it, right? So damianvoorhagen.com. If you want to have a chat first or just add me on LinkedIn, and the moment you add me on LinkedIn, I will also check your profile so I know what you're doing as well. And yeah, I'm the only Damian Voorhagen on LinkedIn. And typically, a lot of people that are entrepreneurs have a lot of mutual connections as well because I have quite a big LinkedIn network already. So I'm quite easy to find, I would say. So yeah, just book the call if you want to, or ask me a question on LinkedIn. Just add me there, and yeah, we'll figure it out.
Take it from there. Yeah, cool. And you're
Yep.
cross jurisdictional. Doesn't like they don't need to be in the Netherlands. They can be as long as they speak English and can get online. I think they can talk with you. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so currently most of the clients are from Europe, and that's
Yeah.
simply because, as I said, everything right now is from network and referrals. So because I'm in the Netherlands and a lot of my friend entrepreneurs are there as well, they have some connections in close countries, and it just ends up being mostly Europe. But I have no problem working in any kind of country as long as the person I'm working with and the idea of the company are cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, ideally, I'm not doing calls during the night or something. So if there's a
I
big
get
time
it.
zone difference, we need to figure that out. But that's never been an issue. Also, not for more infrequent work.
Yeah, I think you always have the ability to say no to the call as well, right? Like it's like, yeah, this just isn't going to
Yeah.
be a good fit. Somebody says, "I want to talk to you about my toenail clippers." That's what I want to get on on GoFundMe. I think you could maybe you really care about toenail clippers. I don't know. Cool, Damien. Thanks so much for the time. And if you're listening and you want to do this, check him out on LinkedIn or check out his website. I will link to both in the show notes. And we'll see you on the next podcast. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.